Thank you so much for joining us on TVP World, Mr. Brusylo. You are, of course, a deputy head of the presidential office here in the Ukrainian presidency, also a key foreign policy advisor to President Zelenskyy. And I want to start with that. You were in Washington for the recent meeting with President Trump. You were also previously head of protocol for the presidential office. So with both those things in mind, the way the meeting happened, the protocol behind the meeting, the feeling in the room, but also the foreign policy stakes for Ukraine, how did it go?
Well, thank you for being, first of all, in Kiev on these important days for our country and for our people. It sends a very strong message. Talking about the Washington meeting, what I can say is that was a necessary step forward. That showed, first of all, the unity of Europe and the United States. And what President Zelenskyy brought with him to President Trump is to outline the situation, the real contours, the real outlines of what we have now on the ground. And that was confirmed also by the map that every one of us saw in the Oval Office, in the White House. And President Zelenskyy spelled out in simple terms the real situation on the battleground, because you need to possess the command of real facts to, manage the real state of affairs. The atmosphere in the White House was very conducive for real talks, for practical actions to be taken. And that outcome was taken by both presidents, President Trump and President Zelenskyy, to the follow-up meeting with the European leaders. So they exchanged on a bilateral basis about the relationship between Ukraine and the United States. We have something to offer to the United States, what they are interested in. And we, of course, need to ensure that the United States is on board as regards the elaboration of security guarantees, talking about the peace process that we're trying to embark on with the Russians for quite a long period of time. From the protocol point of view, that was a nicely made meeting. Why? Because it was made in a short notice. Everyone came just almost in one day. It took all leaders together in one day. And President Trump played a special role, but of course President Zelenskyy, with his talent and with traits in the character, also managed to secure the presence of all European leaders. And European leaders needed it as well, because, well, they understood that it's about the European security, first of all, if it is primarily about the security for Ukraine.
I'd like to ask you about something President Trump said, referring to a peace deal, whatever it may look like. He said that he will be part of backup for European security guarantees, but if a deal is reached, he said they're not going to have much more of a problem. He seems to be of the view that if there is an agreement brokered through the help of the United States, Russia will seemingly no longer be a threat to Ukraine. Is he right about that?
Hopefully, yes. This is the main thing, but the main thing for security guarantees to be obligatory, not a kind of assurances that we received one day from the countries of the Budapest Memorandum that was badly tailored and never implemented. The main idea is to have real things on real paper, and that these things are ratified by the parliament of those countries who are ready to join the security guarantees and provide them in case Russia decides to repeat its aggression.
Let's talk about real things. What does Ukraine need? We've heard Mark Carney in the last few days, the Canadian Prime Minister, saying it can't just be the Ukrainian military. There may need to be a need for European or Canadian troops in Ukraine. What are the main priorities that, and not just on a political level, but for Ukrainians, where they can finally live in a country that feels that it has a future secure from that Russian aggression? What is needed practically? Is it troops? Is it more weapons? What's the best case scenario for Ukraine?
Actually, it's everything that you have just mentioned. First of all, it's about air defense, and I would put it in the first place. We will need it for many, many years to come, if not forever. And here we want to have the support of our allies and the United States, first of all, because still they have the best air defense systems in the world. And we have to ensure the necessary number to create the air shield with both air defense systems like Patriots, and then we have developed some technologies in drone interceptors, and they also will be used in striking down any air targets that will enter the territory of Ukraine. For that we need financing and funding by our partners because we have the capacities to produce more drones that we have financing now. So the technological part is the cutting edge of Ukrainian technology, and we are ready to do that. Boots on the ground is an important element of the security guarantees, and the more countries will be on board with the bigger number of flags, so to say, I mean, well, the participants of this coalition ready to be deployed on the territory in Ukraine, not necessarily on the front line. We are talking about the territory of Ukraine in the west and in the south, for example, where we will need the deployment of these forces that will send a strong signal to anyone in the world that the repetition of aggression is, if not impossible, then is very hard to sustain for the country who decides to do that, because this is the coalition of the countries who will never let it happen again.
Do you think Russian Federation troops, not are capable, we know they're capable, but if we have Estonian, French, British, Norwegian, Canadian troops here, do you think Russia would attack them?
I think that they will think twice before doing that, and this is the main reason. There should be, a fear that it will happen because Russia will definitely attack. That would be a signal to Russia that, well, think twice before you make your next step. And it's the same like about the NATO-like Article 5 security guarantees. It's not NATO, but the idea behind that is that all countries gather together and within 24 hours they decide what actions to take on the practical side of the matter, how to deter. And what you mentioned, Prime Minister Carney, and his words resonate very much with the society, with our people here in Ukraine: deter and fortify. And he referred those words to the previous words of Gorbachev and Reagan when they exchanged trust but verify. Now, in this case, in our relation with Russia, we have to deter and fortify. And another element is the security guarantees is the strong Ukrainian armed forces. We understand that it will be on us, on our people, on our professional army to hold the first line, to repel any possible future aggression after the peace deal is reached.
Talking about relationships with other countries, let's move a little bit closer to Europe. The Foreign Minister of Hungary said that the attack on the Druzhba pipeline was an attack on Hungarian sovereignty. Is he right?
Well, not really and not indeed. Well, everything that may happen on the territory of Russia happens there. If it influences somebody of our neighbors, so we are ready to meet and to talk how they see it. Because I don't know what was meant by the words of the Prime Minister, but what I can say now is that the President of Ukraine is absolutely available for the meeting in Kiev and in Budapest in the nearest time.
To hear Hungarian frustrations, to compensate Hungary for losses, perhaps?
Well, we have a number of issues to discuss, including the one that will deblock our way to the European Union. And the same regards the situation with energy, with economy, with logistics, with cybersecurity, with anything, because we are close neighbors and we have to build the relations as neighbors and not through mediators like the Russian Federation in this case.
I'm going to ask a question. I suspect you won't have an answer for me on this, but am I to understand that the Ukrainian position is if Hungary unblocks the accession process, Ukraine is willing to reconsider any strikes that affect Hungarian energy supplies?
Well, Ukraine is ready to all practical and fruitful cooperation and meaningful relations. And if the meeting happens, it happens exactly to discuss all issues, including the most sensitive one, with Hungary, with any other country, with Slovakia, and even with Russia.
a diplomatic answer to perhaps a slightly undiplomatic question from me. I'd like to ask you about Poland. Of course, you won't be surprised, TVP World is a Polish broadcaster, and about the new Polish president, President Nawrocki. Two developments in the last few days. One was the veto on benefits for some Ukrainians living in Poland. The other, which we'll come back to, is a consideration of banning the black and red flag in Poland. What's your reaction to those decisions by President Nawrocki?
Well, the reaction is that it takes two leaders to meet. First of all, again, I will be diplomatic, but in any case, they have talked on the phone, but it will not substitute for a full-fledged meeting. And Poland is one of our biggest allies and partners, and economic partners. So we need to sit down to charter a new program for the development of relations, including those that you have mentioned now. There is the Committee of the Presidents whose composition is to be reformed in view of the changes in our government and in view of the new president is in power in Poland. Talking about the social welfare system, that decision of the president in Poland were taken yesterday, is that I believe that Ukrainians contribute a lot to the economy in Poland. No need to say that we are extremely grateful to Poland for what Poland did in the first days of this war, when every Ukrainian was a welcome guest there, because Poland understands and Polish people understand what Russian threat is. Well, I believe this is a two-way road. If there is the contribution from the Ukrainians who work and fortify the economy of Poland, then there should be also the reciprocal reaction of the new Polish administration. It should be a practical look at what Ukrainians contribute and what Poland is not happy with.
So a very quick one. You would like President Nawrocki to come to Kyiv?
Absolutely. The sooner, the better.
Final one from me. A meeting between President Zelenskyy and Vladimir Putin. Will it happen? When? Where? Do you have any details you can share?
I will repeat just the words of President Zelenskyy, that he is ready to meet even tomorrow. So any day, to discuss any place, by the way, except Moscow. It's a senseless offer because it's not possible to go to the capital of the war for discussions, for talks. And it takes now President Putin to say his word, whether he is ready for this meeting. Well, and from his actions, we understand that he wants this war to be taken forward. That's why we are working now with our partners on the security guarantees for Ukraine first.
Mr. Brusylo, thank you so much for speaking to TVP World.
Thank you for being here.